It started like any other Tuesday. The lobby of Hensley and Ward Global hummed with the usual rhythm, heels tapping across marble, the soft hiss of the espresso machine, and the low murmur of executives trading small talk over burnt coffee. No one paid attention to the woman who stepped through the glass doors. Why would they? She wasn't dressed like power. No designer logos, no flashing jewelry, just a long camel coat, a leather bag slung across her shoulder, and a look in her eye that said she wasn't here to be impressed. Denise Carter didn't walk like she was trying to prove something. She didn't have to, because when you've built an empire from scratch, when you've been doubted, dismissed, and still come out on top, you learn how to walk in any room like you own the building. But the receptionist, a young woman barely out of college with a nameplate that read Kendra, barely looked up from her screen. One glance at Denise's brown skin and no-nonsense look, and her assumptions took over. Without so much as a question, she muttered, "Deliveries go around back." Denise didn't flinch. She just stood there, quiet as a storm gathering on the horizon. Kendra finally glanced up, her expression flat, her voice laced with the kind of polite dismissal that cuts deeper than any insult. "I said deliveries go around back," she repeated, this time with the slow emphasis people use when they think you don't understand English or your place. Denise didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply said, "I have a 9 a.m. appointment with Mr. Hensley." Her tone was even, her posture composed. But Kendra's fingers danced across the keyboard in mock efficiency. She barely glanced at the screen before waving a hand. "Nothing under that name. You're probably at the wrong building." A couple of people nearby lifted their heads, sensing tension. One man sipped his coffee a little slower, pretending not to listen. But Denise remained still, rooted, graceful, unbothered. "Could you check again?" she asked, voice calm but firm. Kendra sighed. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This entrance is for clients and executives only." And then, without warning, she reached across the counter and tugged the sleeve of Denise's coat. Not hard, but enough to show she had crossed a line. It was a gesture that said, "You don't belong here." Security arrived within moments. 2 men in suits flanked Denise as if she were a threat. "You'll need to come with us," one said. No apology, no question. As they escorted her out, Denise didn't protest. She held her head high, silent, poised, because storms don't scream when they break, they just arrive. Outside, the air had a bite to it, one of those early spring mornings where the cold still lingers in the bones. Denise stood on the sidewalk, unmoved by the stares from inside the glass tower behind her. She didn't rush. She didn't fume. She simply reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She dialed a single number. No contacts, no scrolling, just one number, etched into memory. It rang once. Then in a voice smooth as aged mahogany, she said, "Pull everything." No explanation, no rage, just those 2 words. And on the other end of the line, something shifted. A team moved. Systems began shutting down. Meetings were canceled, emails erased. She didn't need to storm into a boardroom or make a scene in the lobby. Denise Carter never raised her voice. She didn't need to, because when you build the power, you don't need permission to use it. Upstairs on the 27th floor, the executive conference room buzzed with mild impatience. Polished shoes tapped under a long glass table. Laptops were open, agendas displayed, but no one was talking about what was really on their minds. "She's late," muttered James Whitaker, the CFO, glancing at the sleek wall clock for the 3rd time. A few others nodded, unsure whether to admit they were nervous. Denise Carter was supposed to be here by now. Today's meeting wasn't just a formality. It was supposed to finalize a deal that would change everything. A merger between Carter Innovations and Hensley and Ward. The press was already whispering. Analysts were watching. Billions were at stake. But no one downstairs had told them what had happened in the lobby. Meanwhile, at the front desk, Kendra was laughing. She nudged her coworker and whispered, "You should have seen her face. Thought she owned the place." Her colleague chuckled awkwardly, eyes flicking toward the elevators. Something didn't sit right, but Kendra didn't notice. She was too busy feeling victorious. She hadn't just dismissed a woman. She had unknowingly shoved a match into a powder keg, and the fuse was already burning. It began with a flicker, A frozen screen here, a spinning cursor there, the kind of technical hiccups that usually earned a shrug or a quick call to IT. But this wasn't normal. Within 15 minutes, executives across Hensley and Ward's upper floors were locked out of their emails. Internal drives blinked into emptiness. Secure files vanished like smoke. Conference call lines failed. Video meetings froze mid-sentence. The firm's digital heartbeat had flatlined, and no one could say why. Down in the server room, technicians were swearing under their breath. Backup systems wouldn't load. Passwords had been revoked. The firewalls, once impenetrable, were now wide open or completely gone. It wasn't a glitch, it was a shutoff. Then at exactly 10:17 a.m., every major business network lit up with the same breaking headline: Carter Innovations withdraws from merger with Hensley and Ward, citing ethical concerns. The newsroom floodgates opened. Twitter exploded. LinkedIn lit up like a bonfire. Stock tickers turned red. And for the first time, someone in the boardroom whispered what everyone else was too afraid to say out loud. Did something happen downstairs? Phones began to ring. Investors wanted answers. Journalists demanded statements. Legal flagged the wording, ethical concerns. That wasn't just a pullout. That was a public indictment. And Denise? She hadn't said a word. She didn't need to. The first domino had fallen, and the whole tower was starting to lean. The internet doesn't wait for press releases. Within the hour, hashtags were trending. Tweets boycott Hensley, Reyered respect black excellence, Denise Carter deserve better. Screenshots of old employee reviews surfaced. Anonymous accounts claimed this wasn't the first time Hensley and Ward had messed up in the lobby. Stories spilled out like cracked dam walls, microaggressions, passed over promotions, boardroom jokes that never got called out. One post stood out. It was a simple photo of Denise Carter standing outside the building, chin high, coat catching the wind. The caption read, "You told her to go around the back." Now the whole company's headed out the door. It was shared over 1 million times before noon. Back inside, Kendra finally learned the name of the woman she had dismissed. The same name plastered across every financial headline. The same woman her CEO had been preparing to meet for months. Her mouth went dry. Her hands, once confidently scrolling through TikTok, now trembled against the keyboard. And in the executive suite, the temperature dropped fast. Investors pulled out. Partners called to postpone meetings indefinitely. Legal advised silence. PR begged for guidance. But the truth was, no crafted statement could undo what the world had already decided. Hensley and Ward had failed the character test and failed it publicly. Meanwhile, Denise Carter didn't speak to a single outlet. She didn't need to. Her silence said more than any press conference ever could. The world had seen enough to draw its own conclusions. And the receptionist who once felt so certain of her place in the company, she now sat frozen behind her desk, suddenly very aware that the woman she told to get lost had just erased her future with a single phone call. By 1 p.m., the boardroom was in full triage mode. Phones buzzed with nonstop alerts. Emergency meetings overlapped. One director was on the verge of tears. Another was already calling his lawyer. The air smelled of sweat and desperation, and underneath it all, the slow rot of realization. Downstairs, Kendra looked up from her desk just in time to see Robert storm through the lobby like a thundercloud. Behind him were 2 security guards and a stone-faced HR manager gripping a clipboard like a sword. Kendra stood stammering. "Mr. Hensley, I didn't know. She didn't say who she was." Robert didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His eyes were sharp enough to slice glass. He placed a sealed envelope on the desk. "You're terminated. Immediate dismissal. Gross misconduct." "But I didn't mean," Kendra pleaded. Her voice cracked. The HR manager cut in, cold and clean. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't care to know." Her co-workers avoided her gaze. The same ones who laughed at her jokes that morning now stared at their screens like she didn't exist. Security waited, polite but firm. Upstairs, the chaos spread. Robert tried to steady the ship, but it was already halfway underwater. In a last-ditch attempt to deflect blame, he turned on his right-hand man, Thomas Avery, the one who had warned against the merger from the start. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" Robert barked. Thomas didn't flinch. He just leaned back in his chair and said, "I did. You didn't listen." And that was the real truth. This wasn't about one receptionist. It wasn't about one mistake. It was about a culture that had grown too arrogant to see the cracks forming beneath its own weight. By 3 p.m., the board delivered its final decision. Robert Hensley would resign, effective immediately. And as he signed the paper, the same hand that had once built a business empire now trembled over its ruin. The reckoning had arrived, and Denise Carter had never even stepped back inside the building. High above the noise and fallout, Denise Carter stood on the rooftop of her company's headquarters. The skyline stretched before her, steel and glass rising into the afternoon haze, as if the city itself were holding its breath. She didn't gloat. She didn't pace. She simply watched. Her assistant Miles stepped onto the roof holding a tablet. "It's done," he said softly. "Board forced the resignation. Media's running the story. Hensley and Ward, it's finished." Denise nodded, slow and steady. Her eyes didn't leave the horizon. This wasn't about revenge. That was never her style. She'd built Carter Innovations not on bitterness, but on brilliance, on purpose, on the quiet fire that burned inside every time someone called her sweetheart in a boardroom or asked if she was in the wrong office. "They judged me the moment I walked through the door," she said. "I just made sure the fire they lit reached the top floor." Miles said nothing. There was nothing to say because this wasn't a single victory. It was a shift, a message that rippled through every C-suite and reception desk across the country. Respect isn't something you give when someone earns it. It's what you offer when you believe they belong. So what did this really cost them? Not just a deal, not just a stock crash or a few red-faced board members. No, it cost them their reputation, their credibility, and a future they never saw slipping away. All because someone at the front desk made a snap judgment, and the people at the top let that culture fester. The lesson here is simple. Character is revealed when no one's watching. Respect isn't reserved for the powerful. It's how you treat the quiet stranger in the lobby. Because one day that stranger might hold your company's future in her hands.